Hello and welcome to Exe Files on 106.8 FM in Exeter. I'm your host, Alison Rockbrand, and I'm here with my co-host, Richard Freeman. Hello, Richard.
Hello, and hello, wireless listeners. That was Wildman by Kate Bush. And on the subject of the Yeti, apparently Hitler and the Third Reich were very interested in the Yeti because he was an Aryan.
Very funny. You have to get to know Richard's excellent puns, which usually most of us go, what? And then 10 minutes later, we're like, oh, I get it. So they're way too advanced for most of us. We're here in the studio today with our special guest, Jonathan Dymond.
Hello.
Hello, Jonathan.
Hello.
Hello.
Jonathan is a local pagan, can I describe you as that?
Yes.
Practitioner in Exeter, and has very recently been to a very interesting place, a Viking village reenactment site.
Yeah.
And I've been living there for some time.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And but first we're going to start with some news from Richard.
Hi. Well, first of all, we're in Egypt. And the Egyptian pharaoh, Queen Nefertiti, could be buried in two newly discovered rooms in King Tutankhamun's tomb, according to a British archaeologist. Nicholas Reeves said on Egyptian TV that two extra rooms have been found hidden in the walls of the tomb. The Egyptian officials say that they hope to give the go-ahead to use radar scans to test Mr. Reeves' theory that Nefertiti remains hidden behind one of them. She was the Queen of Egypt during the 14th century BC. Mr. Reeves believes that the remains of Tutankhamun, who died 3,000 years ago, aged 19, may have been rushed into the outer chamber of what was originally Nefertiti's tomb. The remains of Tutankhamun, who may have been Nefertiti's son, were found in 1922. Dr. Reeves developed his theory after a Spanish company of artistic and preservation specialists, Factarum Arte, were commissioned to produce detailed scans of Tutankhamun's tomb. The scans were used to produce a facsimile of the 3,300-year-old tomb near the site of the original Valley of Kings in Luxor. Whilst assessing the scans last February, Dr. Reeves spotted what he believed to be marks indicating there were two doorways, where two doorways used to be. The archaeologist from the University of Arizona says he believes Nefertiti may lie inside. Tutankhamun's tomb was the most intact ever discovered in Egypt. Close to 2,000 objects were found inside. But the layout has been a puzzle for some time. In particular, why it was smaller than those of other kings' tombs. Dr. Reeves believes that there are clues in the design of the tomb that indicate that it was designed to store the remains of a queen, not a king. His theory has yet to be peer-reviewed by leading Egyptologists, and they have urged caution over his conclusions. For the next story, we're back in Siberia again. We just can't stay away from Siberia. It's all happening over there. This is a doozy. A controversial Russian scientist has injected himself with 3.5 million year old eternal life bacteria found in the Siberian permafrost. He now says he's stronger and never gets ill. Anatoly Bruchukev, head of the geocryology department at the Moscow State University, says he's not had flu for 2 years following his injections. The bacteria, named Bacillus F, has remained alive in the permafrost for millions of years. Scientists have tested it on mice and human blood cells, but Bruchukov says he decided to become a guinea pig for the experiment. I started to work longer. I've never had flu for the last 2 years, he told the Siberian Times. After successful experiments on mice and fruit flies, I thought it would be interesting to try interactive bacterial culture. The bacteria is actually trace amounts found in water of the region, he claims. The permafrost is thawing, and I guess these bacteria get into the environment and into the water. So the local population, the Yakut people, in fact, for a long time have been getting these cells in the water, and even seem to live longer than some other nations. There's no danger in this for me. He admitted he had no idea what the bacteria was doing to him. But we do not yet know exactly how it works. In fact, we do not know exactly how aspirin works, for example, but it does. The same is true here. We cannot understand the mechanism, but we see the impact. Perhaps there were some side effects, but they should be special medical equipment on to spot them. Of course, such experiments need to be conducted in a clinic with special equipment and statistics. Then we can clearly say, that could clearly say sorry, I can't even read this. Then we could say clearly all about the effects. That sentence doesn't even make sense. Maybe it's because he was Russian. If we can find out how the bacteria stays alive, we'll probably be able to find another tool to extend our own lives, he told RT, a global news channel, in an interview. The bacteria may also hold the key to fertility, as it allows older female mice to reproduce once others have stopped being able to do so, and it heals plants. Describing the discoveries as a scientific sensation and the elixir of life, the epidemiologist Dr. Viktor Chernyavsky said the bacteria gives out biologically active substances throughout its life, which activates the immune status of experimental animals. As a result, mice grannies not only begin to dance, but are also producing offspring. If the same can be given to people, it could cause a significant improvement to their health, leading to the discovery of an elixir of life. The bacteria was discovered in 2009. It was embedded in ancient permafrost in a site known as Mammoth Mountain in the Sakha Republic, also known as Yakutia, the largest region of Siberia. Similar bacteria was found in the Siberian permafrost by scientist Vladimir Rapin in the brain of an extinct woolly mammoth preserved in the frost. We did a lot of experiments on mice and fruit flies, and we saw a sustainable impact of our bacteria on the longevity and fertility, said Dr. Brushkov. But we do not know exactly yet how it works. We cannot understand the mechanism, but we can see the impact.
Well, thank you very much. That's a very interesting couple of stories there. I've heard good things about bacteria. I hear it's on the up. And obviously the Philosopher's Stone, I mean, we've been looking for that for ages.
Yeah.
So the elixir of life, it's all coming around to the same thing, it seems.
Siberian scientists, they don't mess about, do they? Oh, I found some 3.5 million year old bacteria in this permafrost. I'm going to inject myself with that.
Sounds good to me, you know.
Fantastic.
Isn't that none of this sort of, I think I'll actually see what's this and what it's made of, and what the hell, see what happens.
Obviously. I mean, it's the quickest way to some kind of result, no?
Yeah.
Come on, British scientists, don't be pussies. Get your finger out. I want some mutations and strange shit going on.
So, Jonathan, tell us about this village. I'm just very interested to hear about your experiences.
Well, it's a place in Sweden near to a city called Bastard. By the way, you have to if there's anyone actually from Sweden, I apologise for my pronunciation of everything Swedish from this point on, because I don't speak Swedish. It's near to a city called Västerås, which is kind of just a ways west of Stockholm, in a village called Frossakersbrygga, which means Freya's granary, Freya obviously being goddess of love and kind of abundance, and also war, because the Vikings can't seem to get any god without a certain measure of warfare in there. And it's a centre that does, they have a few different sort of focuses, one of which is they've got a huge collection of recreations of ancient boats from various different sort of eras, from sort of early Viking period right up to kind of the 13th century. They've got a big...
Right, so how big is the village?
Well, they've got a big, kind of big mead hall that they have people come and sort of do sort of learning how to cook and sort of events, big events on there. Then there's kind of few buildings around the harbour. Again, sort of place that people stay. There was a hut that I was staying in. Other people, village. They have a forge there, which I spent a lot of time working in. Got slightly addicted to metalworking. Strangely, kind of, you spend all your time sort of gazing into the fire, and you just kind of, your eyes go a bit weird.
So, what made you want to go to this place?
I've been interested in sort of history, particularly when it's kind of, for start, practical history. So actually doing things, sort of getting your hands dirty and actually kind of experiencing things, and when it's about kind of the everyday lives of people. I'm not particularly interested in what sort of kings or queens were doing or sort of great politics of nations. I think it's much more interesting to know what it was like to actually be sort of a smith or an archer or a fisherman or whatever. And
yeah, no, I totally agree. Actually, I don't know if you've ever read a book called I think it's called just The English, and it's basically a book of everyday habits about like people in Britain over the course of, I think it's sort of Middle Ages.
Yeah,
and it's a very interesting.
Does it go up to the modern day?
I don't think so. No. It's a history book. But no, I just, because I also found it fascinating, and I thought the same thing. I thought, oh, kings and queens, it's always been a bit boring to me. But what people are doing every day, it's so fascinating.
It's interesting how it kind of, you can see that kind of the sort of the interests and kind of ideas of a culture kind of coming right up to kind of modern times. So there seemed to be a real interest in people in Sweden of their history, and that applied with the kind of Scandinavian sort of way of doing education was really kind of inspiring to see, because a lot of what I was doing was working with kind of kids. Sort of we had a lot of families coming and sort of teaching little kids how to sort of.
Is that people from the local area?
Local area, and mostly local area, sort of some sort of further afield. In fact, we had a few times we had people from England even coming, which is slightly surreal, kind of, I've come to Sweden and I'm surrounded by English people. But no, it was really interesting to see how the kind of the way of sort of teaching about history sort of differed there. It was, again, much more have a go at it and see how you manage. So
can you just for our listeners, can you be more specific? What era of Viking village is this exactly? Like, is it a specific era?
It wasn't a specific. They had sort of elements from different periods of time. So again, sort of some of it was probably, which is one thing which I did find a little bit kind of confusing. Sometimes I kind of wanted to be a little more precise about, well, is this sort of 8th century, or is this 10th century, or is this even later? So
but sort of within a couple of centuries.
Yeah, within a couple of centuries, definitely.
And so so you blacksmithing?
They had blacksmithing, they had archery, people going out rowing in the longboat.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking about. Like how much sort of sailing was involved.
I'd never actually took out any boats sort of under sail. Did quite a bit of going out, kind of
like rowing. Yeah.
So we had a few boats that you could
that's what I mean, really. Like how much time on the water.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, there were a couple of boats that were kind of big enough that you could kind of, I think one of them was, what was it, about 15 people rowing. Another one kind of couple that are sort of few less than that, but yeah, so that was really good to kind of just get. And again, it seemed to be kind of very kind of open to anyone. Do you know what I mean? I really liked the way that people could just kind of left to sort of explore it for themselves. And that was with the blacksmithing particularly. I found that people were kind of expected to just kind of experiment with it, which, I mean, in this country we always seem very nervous about kind of health and safety, and everyone's worried they're going to someone's going to sort of burn their finger or something, whereas in this place they seem to have the opinion that, well, yeah, experiment with it, see what you... Yes, it's a forge. Yes, it's hot. Yes, there are sharp things. Yes, there are heavy things. Okay, kids, see what you can do with it. Which I think, for the most part, people were so sort of sensible with it. And I think, particularly for children, they learn a lot more through that kind of experimenting with things than they would if someone had just sort of had someone sort of doing a demonstration of it, and sort of kids are expected to watch.
There'd be scare stories all over the Sun if they did it in here, wouldn't they? There'd be outraged front page stories on all the crappy tabloids.
Yes, child forges sword and goes on a...
What, did they do lessons in going absolutely berserk in battle?
Yeah. Do they have any magical lessons? Do they have like seeds?
No. If I'd have been there longer, I would have liked to have sort of...
Oh, runes. Runes.
Because that was the other thing. They had like pieces of stone people could carve runes into it, which was... But I think it would have been... Personally, I think it would have been interesting to have brought more of the sort of... I guess the kind of rune lore and kind of the mysticism associated with that into it.
Well, how many acres did this village cover, would you say?
In terms of acres, not that big, but yeah, quite a small site, but kind of a lot crammed into it.
But you were also somewhat out into the wilderness, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean the place that I was at was by English standards fairly remote. I mean, in Sweden it's kind of a slightly different...
A little trot.
Although I have to admit to getting slightly lost getting there and going on a trot, as you say, for about 5 hours trying to find the place.
Really? That's always the best kind of place.
Yeah, once my feet kind of recovered afterwards.
So you were talking about some ideas about landscape and myth that you were having.
Yeah, that was a big thing that I kind of took back from my time there, was this real sense of the landscape being very much an underpinning to all the stories that come out of Scandinavia, and that you really couldn't have the stories without their rooting in the landscape. And in some ways the stories that come from these places don't quite make sense without the land that they come from. I mean, just for example, the forest there, kind of really incredible forest, but you've just got huge boulders, sort of obviously been picked up by glaciers at some point in ancient history, but if you didn't know that they'd been picked up by glaciers, you could quite reasonably believe that they were sort of trolls strolling through the woods and being turned to stone when the sun comes up. Likewise, the way the water, I don't know. Yeah, it had a real sense of being a really clear kind of underpinning to the stories that spring up out of it, which is I've got a passage from one of the Eddas which I'd like to read out, which is a little lengthy, but I think it's worth it.
Sure, go ahead.
This is from again, apologies for pronunciation, Sigurd and Gildren, which is
Sigurd, I think.
Sigurd.
And
You want to make
Gundrun. Sigurd and Gundrun.
Gundrun. I'll go with that. And this is the Tolkien translation of. So this is Uphath, the beginning of the world. Of old was an age when was emptiness. There was sand nor sea nor surging waves. Unwrought was the earth. Unroofed was heaven, an abyss yawning, and no blade of grass. The great gods then began their toil. The wondrous world they well builded, from south sun to seas rising, gleamed down on grass green at morning. They hall and hollowed, high up towering, gleaming gabled, golden posted, rock-hewn ramparts, reared in splendour, forge and fortress, framed immortal, unmarred their mirth in many court, where men they made of their minds cunning, under hills of heaven, on high builded, they lived in laughter long lit years ago. Dread shapes arose from the dim spaces, over sheer mountains by the shoreless sea, friends of darkness, foes immortal, old unbegotten, out of ancient void. To the world came war, the walls of gods, giants beleaguered, joy was ended. The mountains were moved, mighty oceans surged and thundered, the sun trembled. The gods gathered on golden thrones, of doom and death deeply pondered, how fate should be fended, their foes vanquished, their labours healed, and light rekindled. In forge fire of flaming wrath was heaviest hammer hewn and wielded, thunder and lightning, Thor the mighty, flung among them, felled and sundered. In fear they fled, foes immortal, from the walls beaten, watched unceasing, ringed the earth around with roaring sea, and mountains of ice on the margin of the world. A seer, long silent, her song upraised, the halls hearkened, on high she stood, of doom and death, dark words she spake, of last battle of the leaguered gods. The horn of Heimdall I hear ringing, the blazing bridge bends 'neath horsemen. The ash is groaning, his arms trembling, the wolf is waking, warriors riding. The sword of Surt smoketh readily, the slumbering serpent in the sea moveth. The shadowy ship from the shores of hell legions bringeth to the last battle. The wolf Fenrir waits for Odin, for Frey the fair, the flames of Surt. The deep dragon shall be doom of Thor, shall be ended, the earth shall perish. In days of doom one deathless stands, who death hath tasted and no more dies. The serpent slayer, seed of Odin, then shall not end nor earth perish. That's that. And
wow, that was amazing.
Interestingly, the just linking to the eclipse, the lunar eclipse.
Yeah,
that we
that's
had
right. Yeah.
recently, the Wolf Fenrir is one of two wolves in the sky in Norse mythology. Fenrir and help me out here, Richard. The other wolf, the one that. So there's two wolves. There's one that Fenrir pursues the sun and. Mind blank. I'm sorry.
I'll look it up, don't worry.
Another wolf that pursues the moon, and an eclipse is supposedly when the wolf...
I forget the other one. I know what you mean, but I always think, like, Fenrir is the big one,
yeah.
You know?
And an eclipse occurs supposedly when the wolf catches up to the sun or the moon and devours it, and an eclipse was supposedly one of the heralds of Ragnarok, which is the ending of the world.
Yeah, we'll see if we can look that up, and we're going to listen to a little bit of your music now. But that was really amazing, by the way. That was really good reading, and while you were reading it, I started having all these ideas about runes, and because it's like I really love the alliteration, you know,
yeah.
And I know that's part of the runic.
The rhyming structure is, I think, really interesting, kind of quite unlike modern English.
Yeah, but I think it's very traditional to have the alliteration in there. I'm very impressed.
So Scandinavian poetry seems to not be so big on sort of rhyming like in English literature. You have kind of iambic pentameter and sort of Scandinavian literature seems to be more in terms of having, like you say, alliterative verse.
Yeah, no, it's really wonderful. Okay, so we're going to listen to some of your music. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? We've got Faun Unda and Labornatium Piesni.
Your guess is as good as mine on pronunciations of those. Neither of these are actually Scandinavian. Faun are a pagan folk band from, I think, North Germany. Couldn't tell you exactly where, but... And then Laborium Piscini are Polish. I'm not entirely sure on the pronunciation of that either, but I don't know, just music that I like.
Okay, well, some excellent music. We listened to it earlier, so here you go. Enjoy.
Stimulating programs, good discussions. This is Phonic FM.
Good evening and welcome back to Exe Files. I'm your host, Alison and Rockbrand, and I'm here with my co-host, Richard Freeman. Hello, Richard.
Hello, and hello, wireless listeners.
We are in the studio tonight with our special guest, Jonathan Dymond, who is a local pagan here in Exeter who has visited a very interesting place, a Viking village, and that's what we've been talking about. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello.
Thank you for that excellent music. For those who were not here just before the break, that was Labornatium Piesni and Faun. And that was Jonathan's music. Excellent choice, I have to say. Yeah. Very interesting music. Yeah. Very unique. So, just before the break, you read us one of the beginning of one of the Eddas.
Beginning of one of the poetic Eddas. Yes.
Yeah, and it was, who was that?
That was J.R. Tolkien's translation.
Yeah. So incredible translation. In case of anyone that doesn't know this, brilliant translation. Very, very magical. I feel very traditional translation.
Yeah. Well, before Tolkien went on to, as everyone knows, write The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and the whole Middle Earth sort of mythology that he created, he was a professor of
That's right.
ancient
Yeah,
literature. So
that's right. Yeah.
He undoubtedly drew on a lot of this kind of source material.
Yeah. It's just because I've done, some Nordic magic, and alliteration is essential, very, very important in runic magic. And so I felt that the poem itself was very magical. I started feeling, Fehus, Dagast, I'm thinking, I'm going to do some spells with this. So very, very nice and very good reading. And on that note, you were just during the break telling us a little bit about some of your experiences, magical experiences at this village.
Well, this was something which I really got a sense of talking to both people visiting the place, the centre, and other people who worked there, sort of talking about mythology and stories and sort of perceptions of the magical world in sort of Scandinavian culture, and the fact that it's quite different to how the magical world seems to be perceived in English culture, even sort of historically in English culture. In England, there seems to be a sense of kind of the magical world at some point having kind of retreated back from the surface. So you get,
I think that's definitely true.
yeah, you sort of, whenever sort of you hear about kind of the Fae folk, you hear about them kind of flitting about sort of quickly, or sort of being sort of half seen, sort of in the corner of your eye, sort of thing. Whereas I think probably because most of Scandinavia wasn't sort of aggressively sort of Christianized in the same way perhaps as much of the rest of sort of Central and Northern Europe was. Hope I'm not being too biased there, but
no, I think it was Christianized much later, actually.
Yeah, it was. I
so
mean,
we're talking like 500 years difference of Christianity, which I think is quite a lot, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And they all the kind of concepts of magic seem to be much closer to the surface, and even ideas of sort of magical creatures seems to be kind of assumption that yes, they're there, of course they're there.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking to Lars Thomas from Copenhagen University in Denmark, and he was saying that in Finland today people still report seeing trolls.
Yeah.
Right up to the modern day.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. In this country, if you say, "Oh, I saw some fairies out in the woods," people will a lot of people think you're a bit odd.
I mean, I know people who've seen fairies. One of whom was an Indian guy. I was in the car when he saw it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. I was in the back. He was in the front, and it was down near Lizard Point in Cornwall. He's this little figure standing in the middle of the road. Sort of couldn't make out facial features, but it was humanoid shaped and brown and about 18 inches tall, and ran off down a.
Well, that's it. In lots of
lane.
Lots of people I know, you're saying you'd seen a fairy, wouldn't raise an eyebrow, but I'm sure there are lots of people out there that would think it was.
Yeah, but we're not exactly in the establishment here.
No, exactly.
We're the weirdos.
Yeah.
So obviously, if we say we've seen fairies, everyone's like, "Yeah, cool."
Yeah.
But so you're saying more people believe in the supernatural?
Absolutely. It seems to be just kind of assumed that it's there. There's no kind of no expectation of it being kind of even really hidden, and that was something which I really got a sense of, kind of wandering through the woods, or even in towns, even, that kind of the ancient world being very close to the surface, almost like in a similar way to the landscape there. There's the bedrock is very close to the surface. The topsoil is very thin, so you feel that's in a similar way to that being close to the surface. The magical world is close to the surface. I actually had one quite close, sort of kind of coming quite close to what I experienced to be. I don't know whether.
Didn't somebody pull you into the forest?
Yes, yeah. This was
Richard told us about this.
This was a slightly kind of shows the Fae in there, not all nice and sort of putting up, because whenever you sort of hear the sort of fairies with little
I've had
bells
some
and wings, and
I've had some the dark Fae.
Fairies have never had wings. It's an invention of the Victorians.
No, for me the Fae have been generally
they're
pretty
people
creepy.
that you kind of want to just like, yes, that's nice, but I'll go and stand over here now. And I was walking back from the big hall one night, and kind of had to walk through this bit of the forest, and obviously completely dark. And I stumbled over a root in the path, and I sort of put my hands out to sort of try and catch myself as I fell, and a hand reached out and grabbed mine. I mean, as real as...
It's like so creepy. Oh my god.
But you were saying it didn't feel human, huh?
No, it's very hard to explain how it felt slightly slightly colder than human hand would be.
Mm.
You know how if you're in a
Something with a different body heat.
exactly if you're in a cold if it's a cold night and someone human grabs your hand, you feel the warmth of it.
Yeah.
This didn't have that kind of warmth.
Didn't you say it had long fingers as well?
It felt longer than a human's fingers would be. Yes, but that could. I mean, this is all happening within sort of seconds, so I don't know whether that's just my perception. But I got a very strong sense that this was a creature kind of helping me up, yes, but then come with me into the woods. And I'm just like, no, I think I'll just go over here. And
I wonder what would have happened if you had gone.
That's exactly what I was going to
there's
say.
a bit of me that wonders.
You could have been married to a Huldra now.
A Huldra?
A Huldra, one of the Huldra folk.
Me. What's the Huldra?
A Huldra in Scandinavia, they resemble the men of the Huldra folk resemble little wizened old men. The women look very, very beautiful, but they have hairy backs and cow-like tails, and they're famous for taking men off into the woods and intermarrying with them. Or it could be a distant memory of hominids interbreeding with modern human beings.
That kind of makes sense. But yes,
but I was thinking when you told me that, I thought, I'd have probably gone with it.
Well, but you're not supposed to go with the fairy folk because you're never going to come back. I mean,
or if you do, you go the classic thing. I don't know if it's a feature of Scandinavian mythology, but definitely in English mythology, that you go away, you spend one night with them. Generally, if you eat the food.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
If you go to visit the fairies, okay, just don't eat the food.
Yeah.
That's a motif you find all over the world. In Japan, there's a story about a guy who goes I think one day to the undersea kingdom of the Dragon King, and when he comes back, 300 years have gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but that wouldn't be so bad. I have a lot of fantasies about going to the future and just leaving this timeline.
Maybe this is a whole.
Just take me away for 300 years.
A whole new sort of outlook in the field of time travel.
No problem.
Fairy folk.
I'll just go hang out with the fairies for 300 years, come back, and it'll be Star Trek. Everything will be better. The World Wars, the World War III will be over. I'm totally into that. By the way,
this is time travel.
We looked up the Fenris wolf thing that we were talking about earlier. We were because Jonathan was talking about the eclipse and the mythology of the Fenris wolf chasing the sun.
Fenris chases the sun, and wolf called Hati that chases the moon. And the blood moon that we've just had when the eclipse happened is supposedly Hati swallowing the moon.
So it's like a conjunction of these.
Yeah.
So it's like the inverse of Fenris. So, but Fenris is also like the apocalypse, right? Because
yes.
The Ragnarok.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like, is Hati the inverse of the apocalypse, or is it like a different type of apocalypse?
To be honest, I couldn't say with any authority.
Yeah, no, I don't know this particular myth, but we did find out that Hati could be possibly also a child of Fenris. And Fenris is, of course, Loki's son. So
because Loki likes to mix things up, and
that's right. But everyone's son at some point in these types of myths. So
yeah, they've got the Norse mythology has a interesting lineages.
Yeah, but so you were saying that the magical stuff is much more closer to the surface, and yet to some degree they're not doing magical stuff in this village, or not that much of it.
No, there seem to be less. They seem to be doing less of the kind of mythology, more the practical. More the practical side of things.
Well, that's important as well. I mean,
But it'd be interesting to know if there are other places that are.
Well, maybe if you had stayed there long enough, you could do...
If I'd been there longer, I would have liked to have sort of tried to maybe introduce a bit of that.
Exactly, yeah, you definitely could have, yeah. They probably would have gone for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, if they're doing runes...
then the next obvious step from that would be to actually...
Yeah.
But there's some amazing... I went to visit a place near to where I was, near to where I was working, that I'll try and put some photos up on the Facebook page, where there's a burial site where they created these what they're called stone ships, and they're literally the shape of a ship laid out in standing stones, and some of the stones there carved with runes that supposedly tell kind of who's buried, kind of literally kind of so and so, son of so and so, is buried here.
So some burial sites.
Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like a really incredible journey.
Yeah.
So what was your day-to-day life like there?
Generally get up, light the forge.
So what time would you get up?
Generally sort of work from about sort of 10 in the morning to about sort of 7:30 in the evening. The place was open from 12 till 6, I think.
For people from the outside to come?
Yeah. Then we also sometimes had sort of big groups come. We had a Viking-themed wedding at one point, which was kind of fun.
Oh, cool.
And did you have feasting and quaffing in the mead hall of an evening?
Some, yes. Although I have to admit, I did feel at one point that when we had this wedding, the idea of loads of people being Vikings, drinking from kind of polished wine glasses, felt a little bit...
What, no horns?
Yeah,
no.
Where are your horns?
Okay, but that was only at the wedding, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else had horns.
Still no horn.
Really?
Really, I felt like...
That's strange, because we all have horns here.
Yeah, I know.
So so you're telling me that the drinking horn is not a big thing in this Viking village?
No.
I don't understand.
But yeah, I found it. I found the bits. I did find the bits of history that they chose to kind of use, and the bits that they kind of
glossed over.
Do they perceive the horns as not being historically accurate?
I don't know.
Because they would have been killing things like reindeer and so on.
Yeah, I'm sure they were.
I'm
sure. I think that's more just the preference of the guy that ran the place.
Oh, it's strange, because drinking horns are so cool.
Yeah, well, that's why I think.
You can't put them down because they've got a pointy end.
No, you have a little pocket on your belt, and you hang it in your...
Or you just make you have the tankard ones, so you can...
With the bottom cut off,
No. You just have a little...
You want something with a big spike.
Yeah, you have the spike, but you just put this in a little pouch on your belt, and you can walk around with it, and it just stays there. You can sit down with it. The big ones, you can sit down with them on. There's no problem.
Sounds like a recipe for wet trousers.
No. No, it's not. No. I'll show you mine, because I have one. Because I went... When I was living in Germany, I got a drinking horn. I got a couple of them. And people were walking around with them attached to their belt. Yeah. And if it's big enough, then it's quite deep and it's curved, So what's in there doesn't actually come out beyond a certain level because it's actually curved, so it sort of stays in.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And so you can basically walk around with quite a lot of liquid in there, and you can walk around, and you can actually sit down with it, and the liquid won't actually come out because of its sort of, I don't know, however it hangs. Yeah. A smaller one, then it's a little bit more dangerous. But no, the bigger ones. Yeah. I saw people walking around all over the place with them and taking them out and drinking from them. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's really convenient. That really works really quite well. So, and you can put hot meat in them, and they don't get hot.
Sounds like fun.
No, I just found them to be super cool. And this is in Germany in some sort of Ren fairs that I went to.
Yeah, well, that's it. I was talking. There was one of the other guys that was working there was from Germany, and I was talking to him, and he was saying that they have a lot of really interesting kind of medieval fairs, and that we don't seem to.
I don't know why they don't do them in England.
Because in England we have so much amazing medieval history. We've got all these castles.
When I was at these in Germany, I was like, why isn't this going on in England? I don't understand. And in Germany, they'll get a castle, they'll rent out like some old cheap castle. Like we have here castles, people are dying to give them away. Rent them out and then hold these little fairs, you know, or just hold them on the outskirts of towns as well,
Yeah.
And some people are living a lifestyle. They are going from Ren fair to Ren fair.
There was a guy and his daughter who came to Flossack at one point, and they were travelling around from different fairs, and they set up their tent with their stall there for a week. And
they live in these tents, and they sort of live this archaic lifestyle. They're cooking over the fire with these big pots, and it's really beautiful. And I was really surprised to see, they're not just working at the Ren Fair, like they actually are living in this lifestyle. I found that really impressive. But yeah, the drinking horn in Germany is a massive thing. Like, you can get really high quality, expensive ones in the German tourist shops. You just walk around and there'll be like this, like here how we have little buses or whatever, little like London buses or London, they'll have drinking horns instead.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just seems so crazy because they definitely connect that with Viking culture.
Oh,
I think.
absolutely.
So it's weird that the actual Vikings, at least in this place, aren't particularly using that. Strange. Did you ask them about it?
Not specifically about that, because the place that I was working at was seemed to be sort of fairly in some ways evenly split between this kind of historical thing and sort of the kind of events and catering.
Right. Oh, okay.
And the events and catering was generally more kind of fancy food and sort of hospitality.
Okay, I see.
Sort of bits of Vikingness sort of attached on as needed.
Okay.
Depending on sort of how Viking people wanted to be. So if they want to, they can do the whole dressing up in chainmail and stuff, or if they want to, they can have nice neat tablecloths and wine glasses.
Why would you want to have? Why would you want to have that in a mead hall?
Why you want to have a big sort of mead hall with shields on the ceiling?
I know, it's so bizarre.
And then
why would you want to go there and have like super clean
exactly
stuff? It's totally the opposite vibe there. Well, thank you very much. This has been most fascinating. Jonathan Dymond, our special guest this evening. And good evening and goodbye from Richard and I. We are gearing up for a special Halloween broadcast, which will be 2 hours long. So we think we're going to go for that and have some storytellers on. So pay attention and listen for that. That will be on Samhain, around Samhain, which I think is I think it's Friday the 30th or something. Next of this month, and I think it's Friday, October the 30th, and so we should be having a broadcast, and so we'll probably we'll do a special, have a 2 hour long broadcast and have some storytellers on. We're going to listen to one more song from Jonathan's choices. We've got Omnia, Fi Ra Huri. Do you want to introduce that?
Your pronunciation is probably as good as mine. These are... I'm not entirely sure where these guys are from. They're great fun, though, and kind of pagan-y folkiness.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to listen to that. Good evening and goodbye from Richard and I. Join us next week and every week, every Friday at the witching hour for Exe Files on Phonic FM 106.8, or check us out online. So, goodbye.
Farewell, wireless listeners.
full of day diddly-diddly-do. Fiddle-diddly-diddly-diddly-do. Whack full of day diddly-diddly-do. Shoo-la-la-no, shoo-la-la-la-no, fiddle-diddly-diddly-do. Oh, the feet are hooty. Whack full of day diddly-diddly-do. Shoo-la-la-no, shoo-la-la-la-no, fiddle-diddly-diddly-do. Oh, the feet are hooty. Whack full of day diddly-diddly-do. Shoo-la-la-no, shoo-la-la-la-no, fiddle-diddly-diddly-do. Oh, the feet are hooty. Whack full of day diddly-diddly-do. Shoo-la-la-no.